You're listening to Generation AI
from LivePerson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Generation AI, where we separate hype from fact and learn from the world's best about AI. I'm Joe Bradley, and I'm here with Ruth Zive, and we're thrilled to be speaking with Shobhit Varshney. Shobhit is a VP and a senior partner at IBM Consulting, leading their AI, GenAI analytics, and IoT practice. Get ready to listen in to a deep conversation about AI prioritization, AI deployment, and AI regulation, and a whole bunch of other things. Before we officially welcome our guest to the show, though, we'd like to play a one-of-a-kind piece of AI-generated content that our team has created just for Shobhit. Here we go.
In the realm of technology's embrace, a leader stands with vision and grace. Shobhit Varshney, a name renowned, at IBM's helm, expertise unbound. In the vast domain of AI's might, he charts a course with foresight. With analytics as his guiding star, he paves the way to ventures far. In financial services, he's well-versed, navigating challenges considered the first. In healthcare's realm, where lives are blessed, he seeks solutions, never rest. In the digital age, he takes the lead, a pioneer in every deed. So let us raise a toast this day to Shobhit Varshney in every way.
Love it, absolutely love it.
Every kind of toast you can imagine was just raised to you. I hope that feels as good as it sounds like it should.
Thank you so much for doing this. This is so much fun. Like I said earlier, I just love the fun aspect of every time I interact with LivePerson, and that just follows through in everything that you guys do. Thanks for doing this.
That's very kind. We'll make sure we send it over to you so you can play it for all of your friends and family.
That'll be my new ringtone now.
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Shobhit. Welcome to the show. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, and particularly how you first sort of became aware of AI, how this first entered into your consciousness. And then I'd love to hear a little bit about IBM's approach.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on this channel. I've been working very closely with LivePerson for the last 5+ years at this point. I've seen you guys go through a great growth journey yourself as well. And together as partners, we have delivered quite a few of these in production. So I just really cherish the relationship that we have built over all these years. Thanks for doing what you do. I'm Shobhit Varshney within IBM Consulting. I'm accountable for all of our AI, generative AI, IoT business in US, Canada, Latin America. Across all the various industries that we serve, we go across the whole gamut of deep learning, machine learning, foundation models, a lot of unstructured content with automation, computer vision, with IoT Edge, and a lot of the work that we do together in conversational AI space and agent assist and contact centers. Mm-hmm. I've been driving AI and growing as a hands-on developer for the last decade at this point, and it's been great to see how AI has evolved, and what we thought was not possible only like 6 months or a year back is now being delivered in production at scale. It's been a lot of personal growth with AI as well. It changes so often. You have to invest quite a bit to stay ahead. We've seen this whole trajectory of going from the pendulum, which used to be on the extreme left-hand side, where we needed data scientists, PhDs to go deliver AI. That has swung where we are co-creating, and it's further swinging where now businesses can go deploy generative AI on their own without needing armies of people. Mm-hmm. So as that pendulum has swung, we have within IBM taken a very structured approach to how we enable businesses to deploy AI at scale. As an organization, we are very focused on open technologies. We have been partnering with the open source community for a very, very long time. We contribute quite a bit. Our Red Hat acquisition is a big testament to how much we're investing in that space. That carries forward when we look at hybrid AI across hybrid clouds, right? We believe that the number of models that one would use in an enterprise is always going to keep increasing, and they will be on all sorts of different clouds. So you'll be orchestrating intelligence wherever it resides. Models will follow where the data is. So everything that we're investing as a company, on the software side, we're building our Watson X stack, which is geared towards data to fuel all the data that's needed, manage it across hybrid clouds, AI to build these large language models intermingled with regular machine learning models, and then governance to control, manage, and understand what's happening with these models. And the models could run anywhere. It could be on AWS, Azure. You could have LivePerson models. And we're trying to orchestrate all of that and do it in a very ethical way. IBM as a company, we established our own chief ethics officer in 2015, and our ethics board in 2018. We've always had that part of our DNA in enabling enterprises to understand, manage, and responsibly deliver AI. And that trajectory has just accelerated in the last few years, as you would imagine.
No doubt. No doubt. So, okay, this will be edited, but it's your question, Joe.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little bit. I just got a little bit confused, but let me deconfuse. So that makes sense. I think, in addition to all the excitement about what's going on in the IBM technology stack, I think it's especially interesting to our listeners, your role as in a consulting sense, right? I think you have a bird's eye view on what brands are doing and how they're thinking about using these tools. So particularly, there's a kind of an interesting question here. We've got kind of generative AI, which everybody's talking about all the time now. That's almost all anybody's thinking about. But then we've got more traditional, quote unquote, or legacy, quote unquote, AI investments as well. How do you see brands managing, prioritizing, and investing in those two categories of AI now? Is it all the old stuff out the window and in with the new? Is it more complicated than that? What are you seeing in the world?
No, I think it's an and approach. It's not an or. If you look at a process, and as IBM Consulting, we are hyper focused on how work gets done in an organization. So pick an example of a mortgage process or somebody filing for an approval, claim, things of that nature. The entire process is a 10, 20-step process. It's very human, very manual. That process breaks down into mini tasks. Each task, we evaluate whether automation, regular AI, or generative AI will actually deliver that at a very high ROI with high accuracy, right? So you lay out the process, you lay out the smarter way of doing it, and for each task, you're seeing what generative AI capability can I bring to the table? Is it worth it? Is the accuracy and bias manageable? Am I getting enough return on the investment? So it's a team sport in our mind. It's going to be a combination of traditional AI automation plus the generative AI. And I think coexisting, looking at it from a whole process perspective, that's where we are very hyper focused by industry, by domains, because that's where we spend most of our time as consultants.
So I guess the short answer is it depends on a host of considerations, it sounds like. And I know you mentioned before the issue of ethics and responsibility. I know that you work primarily in financial services and healthcare, I believe, and there's, the depends in those industries, has to take into consideration data, security, IP, governance. And so I'm wondering, especially given those unique industry considerations, how do healthcare and financial services organizations begin to think about how they deploy AI? Like, where and how should they be getting started? Is it around these particular workflows?
Now, it's a very good question to ask. And across all the different regulated industries I cover, from federal, state, healthcare, financial services, even utilities and others are very highly regulated.
Sure.
Across all those industries, there are multiple architectures that you can deploy to ensure security of data, of IP, making sure that the data is well protected. Things like GDPR, all the regulations that come into play, they're very critical for us to ensure that the architecture that we deploy addresses security first. Mm-hmm. Now, in certain clients, we have data that's securely saved on Azure or AWS or IBM Cloud, Google's of the world. Then we bring the models to them to that particular place and deploy them at rest wherever the data is, right? In some of my industries, especially, for example, I'm working with a very large utilities company right now where they're completely on-prem. They want to make sure that there's no cyber risk to it and things of that nature. In that particular case, we brought in our Watson X platform, which will run on-prem as well, and can go build large language models and deploy them on-prem. But other clients which are on more Azure or AWS clouds, there we would bring the model and deploy in that particular scenario. So we follow the regulatory compliance that's needed in each industry, and then we tailor the workflows accordingly. In 2023, most of the generative AI deployments that we're doing are all human in the loop. Mm-hmm. By definition, we want to make sure that there's somebody who is looking at the accuracy, and there's an insane amount of effort that's going behind the scenes to ensure we can look at each piece of generated content, make sure we tie it into any LLM observability that needs to go into it, Are the regulatory compliance addressed? And any ethical, responsible AI principles across the organization should be deployed across all of those LLM points as well.
Yeah, I think you bring up kind of an interesting point about content and maybe the faithfulness of content usage by large language model systems, right? So this to me feels like an important one. You've got you've got a bunch of information that you want to harness as a brand. You want to use it maybe to talk to your customers, maybe to help your internal personnel out. Maybe to drive efficiency, maybe to drive sales. Who knows? But how do you make sure that there is that faithfulness of the quote unquote understanding of the LLM of what you're trying to feed it from a content perspective? What kind of solutions and challenges do you see people coping with that problem today?
It's an extremely pertinent question. For most of our clients, content grounding is a must-have. You want to make sure that the model that you're deploying understands the nuances of how they look at knowledge inside the organization, right? So typically, we would do some sort of a retrieval augmented generation, some RAG patterns. Those are very, very popular in the industry. And we have some reference architectures on how to do that the right way on each of the different clouds. Whenever we are generating a response, provenance back to the answer is very important. So for one of the large healthcare clients that we're working on, in an agent assist use case, if you ask questions around what's my ambulance coverage in the state of Colorado, Texas, things of that nature, I need an answer. So you're moving from, in the prior life, they would have a lot of links retrieval. So you would find some semantic searches. Now you're moving towards an answer retrieval, right? If it took you 3 minutes before, it needs to take you less than 30 seconds now, right? So you get into the answer. But that answer has to have enough context behind it, saying this part of the answer came from this particular document and so on and so forth. So as long as there's provenance on where the content came from, you start to build confidence into this. Then you can also do things around observability of these models in production. One of the human feedback, for example, is one mechanism, but at times it's too late. If you've already generated an answer and the answer was incorrect, it's too late. But we also do things like, if you showed an answer, did the agent copy that answer and paste it as is, or did they edit it? Those are data exhausts that you can pull out and see what changed. Then we're working with a lot of smaller startups, and we're building some new technologies that help you build an AI that can monitor the responses from another LLM. So now you have an AI monitoring AI, and so on and so forth, right? So we're doing a lot of these techniques to build more confidence and understand the accuracy of these large language models. Structured models are much easier to look for drift, but unstructured content, the space that you and I work so much in, the answers generated are all natural language, right? Comparing two natural language blobs is very difficult. That's where we've been working on the LLM observability models, have quite a few small startups that have invested in this space. We collaborate with them, in addition to all the cloud vendors, IBM clouds or Azure, AWS, Googles of the world.
Interesting. So you've talked about accuracy, certainly important. You talked about regulatory compliance and being able to meet those requirements, which is certainly important. You hear a lot about safety and the safety of AI, especially relative. I think you mentioned ethics, diversity. There are all kinds of safety considerations that maybe go above and beyond accuracy or compliance considerations. So maybe talk a little bit about that. What do enterprises need to do to really safely leverage AI, and what are the primary risks if they don't?
No, there's a lot of risk if you don't take this seriously, right? And
Sure.
I think we've gone through this phase of the first 4 months of the year. We did a lot of education around generative AI, right, on demystifying it. Then the next 4 months, we did a lot of POCs, and that got hypercharged with interns coming in and everybody experimenting with generative AI across every part of the business, right? So now we're at a point where now that you've seen generative AI in action in a small POC, we are seeing a lot of pause with our clients and saying, hey guys, time out. I have some brilliant use cases that have to go into production. Where's the auditability? Where's the trace? I need to put it in Medicaid. I need to go put it in a telco. In that use case, I have to go report against this, right? Now you're getting really serious about, we have an ML ops platform that manages ML models, but it doesn't understand how LLMs work, right? So we're spending a lot of time creating these architectures that go across the enterprise, layers that abstract out LLMs from the end users. 85% of the users in a company are non-technical. They are looking at business workflows, right?
Yep.
For them to interact with these LLMs, all the prompting and chain of thought, tree of thought reasoning and stuff, that has to be abstracted out. So within IBM, we created something called Sidekick AI that helps us abstract that out for us. And that's the kind of stuff that we're building for our clients now. So we have a layer that manages all the LLMs, right? Behind the scenes, we do that. Now I have a single point where I can go in and start mitigating risk, looking at prompt level security, looking at the data that was fed into it, things of that nature. If you look at the life cycle for LLM, you start by creating a model from scratch. Either somebody else did it or you're doing it internally in a company, right?
Yep.
There's data being used to train the model ground up. Then the second step, there's data being used to fine tune it for your particular domain. That's usually an enterprise data set. Then there's data that's being fed in as prompt or as context into the question. And then you get a result back. Those are 4 different points where you have to do some filtering. Right? We've created quite a few tools within IBM to build our own models that we can stand behind. So for example, if we build a model that we cleanse the internet data, we remove all bias and hate and crime, things of that nature, then we can safely go train a model. And that's the first step. So across those 4 steps, we've created some tooling that helps you moderate these models' interactions, things of that nature. So as an example, for one of our clients, we're building a central LLM gateway that helps you look at every interaction that went in and out of any LLM. There we're creating mechanisms where in the contact center space where you and I work, if we want to summarize a call recording, that would call this particular central API. And now I can do everything in one spot. Things like, don't mention my competitor's name in my responses that AI is creating, right? It's a simple policy to have, but now I have a central place where I can do this. And that middle layer is where we are spending most of our time right now. Large enterprises that are pausing to ensure that they're doing this ethically and they can stand behind the regulatory compliance that's needed. And then their safety at a prompt level, at a conversation level, all of that happens centrally.
I love your use of the word pause. You said that twice. And I think that actually is a great way to characterize it. There was this frenzy. We talk a lot on this podcast about the hype. I feel like everyone's come back down to earth now, and we've got to kind of take a beat. And, you know, the work that you're doing on the middle layer, like that's really the important work to ensure the compliance and the safety and the responsibility and the ethics and the diversity. So really appreciate that.
We've all grown a lot in the last few months.
For sure.
And the world keeps changing around us. Speaking of, the rate of change in the technology space around and including AI is certainly like nothing I've ever seen before. If you're a young person or a young company or both in this setting, you know, what do you think you should be focusing on for the long term, right? Like, where are you? Like, well, let's start with the young, you know, young executives, like maybe baby Shobhits, if you like, or young Shobhits. Where would you be kind of urging them to look as far as skill building and, like, you know, should they be coding? Should they be learning how to code anymore? Is that going to go away? Or what other advice do you have for folks, you know, entering in as employees and professionals in this space?
So you're saying let's roll back to a time when you had hair. Like it is such a great time to be alive, and this is the only moment in my entire career where I think I should just quit everything and go back to school. There's just so much to learn every day.
Wow.
And just to give you a personal data point, we track number of hours of training that we do internally within IBM. We call it Think 40. Everybody puts at least 40 hours of training. I was doing my first half reflection, and I've personally put in 410 hours this year.
Wow.
There's just so much that's changing. And if I'm carving out those many hours out of my busy schedule to do this, I think all of us as young executives owe it back to our clients and to our our stakeholders. I think one needs to build expertise in a particular domain. The amount of effort needed to apply AI has plummeted, right? We all agreed that the pendulum has swung. You don't need large armies of data scientists to analyze a contract, look at knowledge articles, and in live person, you can just click a button, configure it, and now you're ready to go. It has already ingested all of that, right? So the AI threshold has plummeted to a point where businesses need to understand how to apply that in real world scenarios. So I think the focus should be more on domain expertise and understanding if I'm in a particular domain, the way a medical devices company works is very different from life sciences, like pharmaceutical company, though everybody's in the part of the same domain, right? So the nuances of how to explain an AI what you're trying to do. I think English, there's a very common phrase that English is the new programming language at this point. I think the focus should be more on how do you apply AI, creating AI, applying AI. I think the pendulum has swung a lot towards applying AI. So the young executives should be focusing on understanding the nuances, getting some executive education on generative AI. So then they can go figure out how do I make this work in my favor for competitive advantage. That should be the focus of executives.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We've had a few folks on the show who've talked, it seems to me that the folks we're seeing that are being the most successful with using this technology are usually, if not always, the folks that are thinking the most deeply about the problem space they're trying to solve, right? That they've got that map in the back of their mind of here's all the mechanics of my universe and of my customer and of all the stuff that they want to do, and here are the places where I know I want to get AI into the mix,
And
rather than a
I'm
big bang.
and I'm in awe on how much people are thinking about this seriously, like across the domains. Right, you would obviously pick retail or telco, banks, and stuff to think about this, right? This week alone, I was with companies that are some of the largest paper and pulp manufacturers. They are people who do cement production. There are companies that do electric circuits and nuts and bolts, things of that nature. And everybody is seriously thinking about, is there an implication to my supply chain? Can I squeeze another dollar out of it? Explain to me use cases. I have people who will bring up their data and say, hey, here's what I have to deal with every day. Let me show you how manual this process is. Tell me if I can actually make a meaningful impact. Does it make, like you're telling me that, hey, I can now read documents and contracts at scale. Here are 5 documents, show me. And we're finally at a point where we can start to leverage these technologies in these back office workflows. We've always promised to say, hey, yes, we can do procurement with AI or recruiting with AI or finance, whatnot, right? For the last 5 years, we've been trying, 5-10 years, we've been trying to get to that intersection point. But every time I show up with an army of MIT grads to help with a procurement process, we outprice ourselves, right? So like, hey, the ROI isn't there. But now we're at a point where you don't need a variety of different models. The same large language model can interact and look and be adapted to different kinds of contracts, different kinds of healthcare. This stuff that humans can't do, if you just think about it, a large language model, you take GPT-4 model, you apply it to a healthcare domain, you apply it to a finance domain, have it listen to a phone call in a contact center, and then write an email for an airline. You can't take a human that does healthcare and put them into an airlines and expect them to perform day one with high accuracy, right? So we're in a completely different, it changes the rules of the game on how we optimize these workflows, right? I think that's a very powerful place to be today.
Yeah, I think, and not only has the equation changed on the technology side, like it's in many ways become very democratized. I think what's also happened is that, collectively across the universe, people's minds have opened up to the possibilities of AI. So there's much more of an appetite and a sense of urgency that they need to embrace it. So, I don't know if you're finding this, but certainly when we speak to prospects, there's a sensibility that they have to be doing this. There's no arm twisting involved anymore. It's table stakes almost.
So we just ran a CEO study, 3,000 different C-suites across the globe. What you just said resonates really well with the C-suites right now. 75% of them were very clear that they see increasing investments in generative AI. They see a boost in AI ROI, things of that nature.
Yeah.
We are seeing 6x improvement in the return on investment on AI. So this is CEOs telling us how much of the increment can they attribute back to the AI projects they ran.
Wow.
That increment that has gone up 6 times in the last few years.
Wow.
But there's still 56% of the C-suites that came back saying lack of trust are some of the big concerns around AI even today.
Well,
so I think as a community,
that's the pause. That's the pause you were talking,
yes.
right?
So,
Yeah.
as a community, if we do a good job at creating the right enterprise layers around transparency and responsible I think that sets us up for to accelerate really, really quickly because the value unlock is significant if you get this right.
So I think
Agree.
another piece of this puzzle, like very related but like slightly different, are the users, the end users of AI in an enterprise environment. So I work with contact center professionals all the time. We run pilots with them, and one thing that I've noticed is that the folks who are in charge of sending messages back and forth between brands and their customers, are now radically more interested in this technology themselves as well. And from my own personal background speaking, like having been someone who is bringing AI and machine learning into companies like Nike, where you have a lot of professionals that have been doing work for a long time, there can often be this really threatening vibe about artificial intelligence and about machine learning, and it can be off-putting, and that can lead to, in a lot of ways, this lack of ROI because people just resist. That to me looks like it's starting to break down as well a little bit, which is maybe a dam that we've been waiting to break for a long time.
Yeah, I think the real world applications versus a POC were very different in the last few years, right? If you can read a piece of a contract or invoice really well, in real world it's very different. I'm working for a really large manufacturing company where computer vision models in production, the real world versus the lab is day and night. You train a really nice model that can identify things on a conveyor belt and can do things with high accuracy. In real world, somebody opens the window and there's so much light it doesn't work. Somebody's hand comes in the way, somebody leaves a soda can somewhere, and now all the images look like they're drifting, right? So real world versus labs have been different. So the return on investment used to be much used to be lagging quite a bit because it was not really adapted. Now that you've taken the real world data and you've trained the model, this insanely large amount of information that has gone in, it has seen these variations. So when you adapt these into a real world scenario, the model has actually seen variations of what contracts look like or how conversations flow in a contact center. Then it's easier to adapt it and get a higher value, time to value. And if you look at the time it takes to go deploy these models, like there's a good 50 to 70% reduction in the total time it takes to go put something into production now with these NLP models, right? So I'm just generally very excited about how fast we're moving. As a community, I've seen a lot of contribution that IBM and others have made in the responsible AI space. So I'm very optimistic that we're going to get this right. It's a team sport for us, and we're opening up we are doing a lot of open source work together as a community to move that forward. Overall, I think the models will keep getting more and more targeted, more and more smaller, more purpose built for a particular use case. They'll coexist with some of the more frontier models, but I think there's a nice balance now when our clients start off with some of the insanely large models, but then over time when we put them into production, we need more smaller, trusted, less like being able to control that even more. So generally very optimistic about the direction that we are moving in.
I love that optimism. And maybe that's a good way to end our discussion today. Shobhit, we have one last question that we like to ask all of our guests. It's a tough one. This is the hardball question that we didn't include in the list that we went through with you. So what is one thing it's a two-part question. What is one thing in your life that you wish you could automate? Not work in your personal life. What is one thing that you wish you could automate? And what is one thing that you would never automate even if you could?
I would never automate time with my kids. My kids are 7 and 9, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And same goes for my parents. Anytime I spend with parents, my wife, my kids, family, that is something that is just that makes me wake up every morning. So that's something that, yes, absolutely. That's an easy ball question, very easy to answer. The part I would automate is travel expenses. Like it is such a pain coming back from a trip and being able to allocate all of that into expenses. That kind of mechanical work, administrative work, is something I'm just terrible at. And that's something I would wish I could get rid of.
I feel like you should be able to do that today. Surely there's a vendor out there that has a solution to do exactly that.
No, we need to get to that point. Now, I think we're now at a point where we can deploy AIs to across
That's right.
these
That's right.
things that were earlier possible. But it's been an absolute pleasure having partnered with you guys more than just this conversation, but together we have spent nights with our clients helping them transform. Between IBM Consulting and LivePerson, we do this across the globe with so many different clients. The one thing I remember very clearly from one of your events, we did a panel of agents who used to take phone calls and now were building AI to help their end customers because they were able to create flows. And there was one particular female on stage that talked about her personal journey of how she feels more empowered and elated, and the respect that she has from her kids because of what she does today. That one session with LivePerson on stage still stays with me, and that was 4 years back.
Wow!
So just
Wow!
the impact that we've had together on lives of individuals, I just feel so proud that we've been able to do this for people.
Well, the feelings are entirely mutual, and I love that story. That obviously predated my time at LivePerson, but I do feel that the impact on the quality of work for agents is a story that is not told as often as it should be. And so maybe that's a takeaway for me from a marketing perspective, that we need to showcase more of those stories, because I agree with you, they're very powerful. So this has been a delight having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. If you could just share with our listeners where they could find you or learn more about IBM Consulting so that they can reach out.
Yeah, just Google for me, Shobhit Varshney. You'll probably get to shobhitvarshney.com, or it'll find me on LinkedIn. There are multiple ways of finding me, harassing me, texting me, slacking me. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and the partnership that we've had and the impact we've driven in the field. Thank you.
Awesome. And Joe, always a pleasure. And to all of our listeners who tuned in today, thank you so much for listening, and make sure that you go and subscribe to Generation AI wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks, everyone.
You've been listening to Generation AI,
Automating Better Business,
a show from LivePerson.
Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share the episodes you love. Until next time.